Hello everyone! Sorry I was not able to get a video finished the last couple of weekends. It has taken me a little while to get caught up after my vacation. Speaking of that, during my vacation, I was able to take a 9-day trip to Japan. The highlight of that trip was a day trip to Nagasaki. This city is most well known by Americans as the second and last time a nuclear bomb was used in wartime. But the city has a storied and tumultuous past that goes significantly farther back than the bombing during World War II. So today I would like to tell you a little bit of the history of Nagasaki and how it connects to the Catholic Church. The first recorded contact between Japan and Europe was in 1543, when a Portuguese trading vessel bound for China was blown off course and made landfall in the southern Japanese island of Kyushu. They were brought before the local daimyo, a feudal Japanese equivalent of a lord of a district, and demonstrated their muskets for this daimyo. He was very interested in this new technology and purchased 2 muskets from them to have his blacksmiths reproduce them. This was the introduction of guns to Japan, but also opened Japan to trade with the West. In 1549, St. Francis Xavier arrived in Japan and founded a Catholic mission in the city of Kagoshima, and began converting the locals to Christianity. This included the conversion of several of the local daimyos of Kyushu, making the Portuguese even more favorable to local leadership. Portugal sent several expeditions over the subsequent years, sending the well-educated Jesuits along with them as ambassadors of the West and evangelists of the faith. Portugal, China, and the daimyos of Kyushu quickly realized that they all would greatly benefit from a trade agreement between the three. Unfortunately, the island of Kyushu lacked a suitable port for large European vessels. So the daimyo Omura Sumitada, who had been converted to Catholicism, gave permission for the Portuguese to establish their own port town in his district on the southern coast of Kyushu. This city would be named Nagasaki. Being founded by the Portuguese, Nagasaki quickly became the center of Western culture and Christianity in Japan. This was during the period of Japanese history known as the Sengoku period, and was generally marked by instability and fighting amongst the daimyos of Japan. Daimyo Sumitado was worried that Nagasaki may one day fall to a non-Catholic daimyo, if it remained part of his fiefdom. So he worked with Jesuit leadership to make Nagasaki its own independent Jesuit-run colony in 1580. Unfortunately, 7 years later, in 1587, a powerful non-Christian daimyo was working to unify the country of Japan again and gained control of Nagasaki. Worried about foreign influence, this new daimyo ordered the expulsion of all Christian missionaries and banned the worship of Jesus. This order was not really enforced at the time, and so Nagasaki continued unhindered for a while. But this was a sign of things to come. In 1596, a Spanish ship was wrecked off the coast of Shikoku, and the non-Christian daimyos took this to mean a Spanish invasion of Japan was imminent. They immediately ordered the crucifixion of St. Paul Miki and his companions, also known as the 26 Martyrs of Japan. This included 1 Portuguese and 5 Spanish Franciscans, 3 Japanese Jesuits, and 17 Japanese lay Franciscans, including 3 young boys who were altar servers for the missionaries. They were arrested in January, tortured, physically mutilated, and paraded across Japan to warn the citizens of the different villages what happened if you followed Christ. Then on February 5th of 1597, they were all crucified and impaled with lances on a hill overlooking the city of Nagasaki. When we arrived in Nagasaki, we were surprised to find this hill directly in front of the main train station in the city. A quick but steep hike up the hill leads to a memorial park with a cross, museum, and church to honor the martyrs of Japan. While these 26 were the only ones officially canonized by the church, this action set off a chain of events that led to a significant persecution of the church in Japan for the foreseeable future. Between 1597 and 1614, there were 70 sporadic instances of martyrdom across Japan. Then, on September 10, 1622, 55 Catholics were again martyred in Nagasaki, which began the Great Glenna Martyrdom. During this time, Catholicism was outlawed. All clergy and theologians were exiled or murdered, with the total number killed estimated at over 2,000 people. A large number of the local population gave up the faith to be spared execution. Japan then closed its borders to all foreign contact for about 250 years. While Japan has had an emperor for a very long time, for a good part of its history, the imperial power was dominated and usurped by the shogun, a powerful daimyo that functioned like a chancellor, wielding the emperor's administrative power and often leaving the emperor as a nearly powerless figurehead, similar to the current monarchy of England. However, on January 3, 1868, after a few years of the shogun making terrible decisions and rising discontent among the people, the Emperor Meiji was able to reclaim the rightful power of the emperor. This became known as the Meiji Restoration, as it restored the emperor to a place of political power he hadn't held for centuries. This is important to our story because it broke the power of the daimyos who wanted to keep Western culture out. As Emperor Meiji reopened the borders to allow foreigners to trade with Japan again, as well as legalizing Christianity and abolishing the feudal system in Japan, outlawing daimyos and samurai. The movie Last Samurai is based on this time in history and loosely tells the story of the short-lived samurai uprising after the emperor dissolved their titles and privileges. Anyway, now that the emperor had opened the borders, foreign missionaries rushed into this basically untapped space to begin evangelization efforts again. When they arrived in Nagasaki, they found many people who not only knew about Jesus, but still prayed to him, said the rosary, and had some basic knowledge of the faith. For 250 years, a large number of Japanese Catholics had continued to live and share the faith with their children in secret, with no access to priests or the sacraments for a quarter of a millennium. That's as long as our country has existed. Can you imagine our ancestors being converted by George Washington and then maintaining the faith without instruction or sacraments all the way to today? The blood of the martyrs had watered the seeds of faith in Japan, and the faith would not die. Unfortunately, our story does not end there, for from 1870 to 1945, Nagasaki became the largest center of Christians in Japan, primarily Catholics. The missionaries had returned and established churches and schools. Nagasaki became a diocese, and a cathedral was built with a large Catholic population centered around it. On the morning of August 9, 1945, the bomber known as Boxcar took off with the bomb known as Fat Man, headed for the city of Kokura. Due to heavy cloud cover and smoke from a bombing at a nearby city that had drifted over Kokura, the bomber could not accurately target the city. So they moved on to their alternate target of Nagasaki, which was also covered in heavy cloud cover. After several passes, the captain of the aircraft decided that they only had fuel for one last pass. During that pass, the cloud cover broke long enough for them to get a clean glimpse at the city. They were 2 miles further north than the port and the Mitsubishi plant that they were targeting. but deemed that this was close enough and dropped the bomb. At 11:02 in the morning, the bomb detonated about 1,650 feet in the air. By a weird twist of fate, this was almost directly above the factory that had produced the torpedoes used during the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was also very close to the cathedral in Nagasaki, which was completely destroyed by the bomb. As the Catholic population of Japan was centered in Nagasaki around the cathedral, a vast majority of the people killed in the bombing were Catholic. One of the Catholic survivors was Dr. Takashi Nagai, a former atheist who had converted to Catholicism. He lost his wife and all of his belongings in the bombing, and yet he saw the bombing as a blessing. He is quoted as saying, "I have heard that the atom bomb was destined for another city. Heavy clouds rendered that target impossible, and the American crew headed for the secondary target, Nagasaki. Then a mechanical problem arose, and the bomb was dropped further north than planned and burst right above the cathedral. It was not the American crew, I believe, who chose our suburb. God's providence chose Urakami and carried the bomb right above our homes. Is there not a profound relationship between the annihilation of Nagasaki and the end of the war? Was not Nagasaki the chosen victim, the lamb without blemish, slain as a whole burnt offering on an altar of sacrifice, atoning for the sins of all the nations during World War II? This is from a man who found the charred remains of his wife clutching her rosary beads and gave thanks to Mother Mary for being with his wife at the hour of her death. The Church of Nagasaki has opened his cause for canonization as a saint. Martyrs of Japan, pray for us. Lord, have mercy on us."